Amy Littlefield. She's the nation's abortion access correspondent and a journalist who focuses on reproductive rights, healthcare, and religion. Hello, Amy. How are you?
Hi, Katie. Great to be with you, although I wish it was under different circumstances.
I know. Next time, hopefully, maybe we'll have something to celebrate. I'm going to bring in Rebecca Parson. She is a commissioner on the Tacoma Area Commission on Disabilities, an organizer with the Tacoma Tenants Organizing Committee, and a congressional candidate for Washington's 6th District. And she's the only candidate in the race supporting a $30 minimum wage, Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, and national rent control. We're also bringing on Shahid Buttar, a constitutional lawyer, national nonprofit leader, and musical artist who won over 81,000 votes from San Franciscans in 2020 to replace the most powerful member of the House, and that is, of course, Nancy Pelosi. How is it possible that we wound up here when we know that the majority of Americans support Roe or support reproductive rights and reproductive freedoms? How did we get here?
One major component of it is the imbalance between a Republican Party that recognized that they could use abortion as the tip of the spear. They could use it as an issue that would help them win over a certain segment of single issue voters, that would help them rise to power. And then they could pass bills against voting rights. They could pass, measures to solidify their power in the states, which has always been the base of power for conservatives. Democrats and progressive groups have often fought more focused on national politics. They've often fought in DC and in the courts. And, Democrats have just not put up a fight to defend abortion rights. There's been this mismatch between a Republican Party that's seized on this as a defining issue and a Democratic Party that's seen it as a liability. I mean, look at President Biden, right? Like, he's supported the Hyde Amendment, which was a mainstream Democratic position for a long time, right? Like, it was only when he was on the campaign trail and it became clear that the tide had shifted and reproductive justice groups had organized around, the inequities perpetrated by this longstanding federal ban, when it became untenable and he rapidly had to reverse his position on that. I mean, that's the figurehead of the party right now, right? And he wasn't even willing to say in the aftermath of this, absolutely seismic shift, we learned the Supreme Court is about to overturn Roe v. Wade. Biden wasn't even willing to say that we should, that Democrats in the Senate should employ the filibuster.
We actually have video of that. Trigger warning, everyone. Brad, could we play the video of that, of Biden's comments?
Did it do away with the filibuster to codify Roe?
I'm not prepared to make those judgments now about, but I think the codification of Roe makes a lot of sense. Look, think what Roe says. Roe says what all basic mainstream religions have historically concluded, that the existence of a human life and being is a question. Is it at the moment of conception? Is it 6 months? Is it 6 weeks? Is it quickening, like Aquinas argued? I mean, so the idea that we're going to make a judgment that is going to say that no one can make the judgment to choose to abort a child based on a decision by the Supreme Court, I think goes way overboard.
Thank you.
Yes, as someone asked in the questions, did he just name drop Thomas Aquinas? Yeah, he probably was friends with him.
Right?
It's just ridiculous. They ask him about the filibuster and he starts rambling about other stuff. Like, I could guarantee you, like, when I'm talking to constituents or regular people who are working at Taco Bell or they're an accountant or whatever, do not give a crap about the filibuster if they know what it is. And if you do tell them, they're like, that's the reason that we can't have abortion. And the way he's dancing around it is, like you said, Katie, earlier, like afraid of his own shadow. Why are we afraid of our own shadow on this? 70% of Americans do not want to see Roe v. Wade overturned. This is a popular position. And also, all the policies that would make women less likely to need an abortion, like, for example, increasing the minimum wage, Medicare for all, housing for all, like this, the financial independence and stability that women need, those policies are also extremely popular. So I don't know why it's very frustrating to see Democrats behave this way.
I really do think it says something that Joe Biden was rambling about Thomas Aquinas instead of, calling full-throatedly for, and there are, I mean, we saw this when Trump was in office. There's a lot that can be done to either erode or advance reproductive health care access from the position of executive office, right?
Right.
And I think Democrats in Congress, I mean, you saw Chuck Schumer out there saying that, people need to vote in the midterms because the rights of 100 million women are on the ballot. And I think a lot of people responded to that by saying, like, what have the Democrats really offered to show that they're presenting an alternative, right? They haven't even been able to exert the political will to get legislation to protect the legal right to abortion in every state passed through Congress.
I would just add to that, in Biden's choice of words, I found not just disturbing, but frankly offensive. There's a point where he referred to the decision to abort a child, which is so straight out of the right wing's literature. And I don't understand why he and other Democrats don't simply recognize this as a simple reflection of bodily autonomy, the right of women to control their own bodies. It is the most fundamental right. And to even imagine the legitimacy of a government trying to dictate to people how to govern their own bodies and limit their life choices around a mandate to procreate is just so absolutely offensive. And the idea that he would toy with it by using this frame that ignores the ultimate at stake, to me, is offensive, whatever his ultimate decision is. When we talk about the filibuster, I have two thoughts here that are, so one of them, on the one hand, everything is held up in the Senate at the moment: voting rights, worker rights, civil rights, we could go on, reproductive rights. It would have made particular sense to have ended the filibuster early in his presidency. He's waited so long that the opportunity to end the filibuster is going to have even less benefit now than it would have had early in his presidency. I remember when Democrats went through this with the nuclear option in the Senate Judiciary Committee on judicial nominations, and they waited most of Obama's term before flipping that switch, and then it got used against them relentlessly under Trump. And, this is part of the pattern of Democrats failing to take advantage of the levers of power when they have majorities in Congress, and setting themselves up to be taken advantage, setting us, we the people, up to be taken advantage of by the right wing when the cycles change. Now, the Hyde Amendment has come up, so I just want to make sure that all your listeners and viewers understand the context for it. It's a prohibition on spending public funds on basic healthcare procedures, particularly abortion services for women who need them. Abortion is healthcare. The Hyde Amendment impedes healthcare for women and girls and non-binary folks and trans folks. It's already bad enough that we don't provide healthcare, but to affirmatively deny it to people it's worse than just conservative. It's worse than just reactionary. It's worse than just an offense and an assault on our rights. These are ultimately human rights violations that the state is mandating and that Democrats are enabling by, at best doing this, talking out of both sides of their mouths. Again, when I look at Democrats and the policy record here, I see outright complicity. And, Joe Biden comes to mind. I mean, remember Joe Biden, before he became the president, one of his signature achievements was putting Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court. And from Casey to Carhart to now, I mean, that thread is pretty clear. And Justice Thomas's contribution to this discourse has not been one that any of us could describe as positive. And in the same way that Biden put Clarence Thomas on the court, Dianne Feinstein did the same thing for Amy Coney Barrett. She and Pelosi did as much to put her on the bench as any Republicans did. And these are decisions that demand accountability. And I do hope that Democratic voters can see through the partisan spin of Pelosi saying, as Rebecca put it, to vote harder, because the people have shown up. We put Democrats in office, and we've also seen Democrats in office refuse to show up. And that's exactly why accountability is so necessary. And also not just in the political arena, but just to reiterate that proposal around life tenure and judges, also in the Article 3 judiciary. Accountability is a principle here that cuts across branches and institutions, and we the people have to be assertive in imposing it, or we're going to get taken to the cleaners again.